Dear friends, welcome to yet another installment of Strategic Power. In this video, we will explore how Russia managed to rapidly rearm itself, increasing its military production to 4 million rounds of ammunition per year, 4 times more than the West combined. At the same time, we see growing economic and military cooperation with China. Did the West underestimate the power of Russia and China? Before we begin, if you haven't already, consider subscribing and turning on notifications to be informed about our new videos. New analyses of Russian military capabilities and threats to NATO security have led to an increase in warnings from Western governments and pressure to invest more heavily in defense. This is the highlight of a new study by the Financial Times, one of the world's most respected institutions for British military intelligence officials. We are facing truly dangerous times, and at a point where large-scale conflict is more likely than it has been in recent history. Although its ground forces have been weakened in Ukraine, its air force and navy remain virtually intact, and Russia is still a major nuclear power. This warning hangs over the Munich Security Conference, which began on Friday, February 16th, bringing together authorities and experts in military security and intelligence, offering a glimpse of the global defense situation at a time of record instability. The event was attended by prominent political figures such as Kamala Harris, Zelensky, who this time is not wearing his suit, possibly in an attempt to show that he is not in good condition, former US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and other world leaders. One reason for Western authorities' concern is the resurgence of Russia's defense industrial machine over the past year, at a pace that many in the West considered impossible. The Financial Times itself is bringing this information to light through journalists Henry Foy, Guy Chazan, John Paul Rathbone, and Richard Milne, who specialize in Russia, economics, geopolitics, and military affairs. The European Union countries took the lead, producing around 230,000 155mm rounds per year, about a third more than the United States. In addition, the European Union has a better recent track record in approving annual spending plans. In February of last year, European production was at 3,000 rounds per year, as reported by Estonian defense authorities. In November, there was another increase in capacity, although estimates vary. So Europe is adapting to the war situation. European Commissioner for the Internal Market, Thierry Breton, indicated that Europe could now produce around 400,000 rounds per year, but some estimates suggest that number could be even higher, between 600,000 and 700,000, and it is expected that by the end of this year, Europe will reach the mark of 1 million rounds produced. However, Russia's numbers are impressive, and these are not just my words. This is again reported by the Financial Times. Here are the real and comparative numbers. The United States plans to increase its monthly production of 154mm projectiles and artillery to 100,000 by 2025. Currently, Americans produce 28,000 projectiles and artillery pieces per month, totaling around 336,000 per year. The demand for 155mm artillery ammunition increased after the invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, but Allied supplies for their own defense were depleted as they sent weapons to Kyiv, which fires thousands of rounds per day. To get a sense of Russia's current military might, just look at the numbers. They are producing 4 million projectiles and artillery pieces, as well as several hundred tanks per year. There are indications that Moscow plans to recruit more than 400,000 men this year 2024, without the need for large-scale mobilization, according to Ukrainian authorities. For comparison, at best, the entire West produces 1 million rounds of artillery ammunition. Based on Russia's current production of 4 million per year, this means that Moscow is manufacturing 4 times more ammunition than Europe and the United States combined. While these security concerns are increasing, the future of NATO itself was called into question by the prospect of Donald Trump's return to the White House, according to a Western media consortium. A cable made by the consortium distorted Trump's recent comments over the weekend, suggesting he would encourage Russia to attack any NATO member that did not meet the alliance's 2% of GDP defense spending target. This political cable, backed by media consortia, seeks to influence the US election campaign, where Trump and Kamala Harris are expected to contest the presidency. European NATO member states increased their defense spending by about a third over the past decade, with some countries significantly increasing their spending since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Although The Russian military is deeply involved in Ukraine and has suffered enormous losses during 2 years of conflict. Most Western authorities expect it to be able to rebuild its forces within 5 to 6 years. Alarms have been sounding loudly in Europe lately. An unprecedented number of Western defense officials have issued public warnings in recent weeks about the possibility of a wider conflict in Europe with a more confident and well-armed Russia. Based on Russia's industrial, economic and recruitment conditions, as observed by the Danish Defense Minister, Jakob Ellemann-Jensen, Russia could test NATO's Mutual Defense Clause, Article 5, within a period of 3 to 5 years. These warnings followed similar alerts from colleagues in Sweden, the UK, Romania, Germany, and senior NATO officials since the beginning of the year. For the chair of the German Bundestag's Defense Committee, Minister Marie-Agnes Strack-Zimmermann, "We will have to prepare for the idea that it is realistic that President Vladimir Putin will attack a NATO country within 5 to 8 years. Putin is driven by a kind of imperialism that we never thought would exist in the 21st century." European officials highlighted one important point. Russia's intention and capacity to attack a NATO country must materialize before the end of this decade, a forecast that is practically a consensus within the US-led military alliance. It is important to note that, despite the alarmism and sensationalism in Europe, officials stated that one of the reasons for the alarming alerts was to prepare societies for the potential danger and ensure that civil infrastructure was ready for the possible consequences. This involves ensuring that our energy supplies and reserves are robust enough, that communication networks are secure and can function properly in wartime, and that our critical infrastructure, such as roads, railways and highways, can handle the mass transport of military equipment across Europe. With Russia's industrial, military and economic renaissance, many wonder how this was possible in the face of sanctions and communication blockades against Moscow. Certainly there are those who question this data, often acting on impulse and consuming information from media consortia, often straying from reality. This renaissance was driven by cooperation between China and Russia, as well as factors from the tertiary military industry with rival nations of the United States. One example is the record trade volume between China and Russia in 2023, surpassing the target set by leaders Xi Jinping and Putin a year ahead of schedule. In a recent phone conversation between Putin and Xi Jinping, Putin reaffirmed Russia's support for the One China policy, addressing tensions around Taiwan, the US's biggest ally, and also discussing the situation in Ukraine. The current situation shows a Russia that has achieved pre-war industrial, military and commercial levels in Ukraine without the need for direct military exports from China. This leads us to imagine what will happen when Beijing begins to export its military equipment in favor of Moscow. The rapid rise of the Russo-Chinese war machine is alarming. While the West faces its own internal crises, Moscow and Beijing are joining forces to build an unprecedented military arsenal, ready to silence any opposition. The question remains how long we will passively witness the global authoritarian renaissance led by Putin and Xi Jinping. Do you think we are on the brink of a third world war? Comment below.